I was sitting at my desk. In front of me, a mess of scattered sheets of finished dialogues, descriptions, scenes with no beginning or end. Next to me stood a half-drunk cup of coffee, probably from last week. It had spilled and soaked through my notebooks, then dried into a black stain. In the center of the desk sat my laptop, a document open on the screen, a blank page with a blinking cursor, taunting me as if to say, well, just write something already. It would have said that if it could talk, and I'd be glad to write something. I really would. But I can't. The desk of a true writer in creative crisis, I muttered with a sigh. Yeah, my desk really did look like a pitiful set piece from some cheap play about a writer in the depths of creative despair. I have exactly 1 month to create a masterpiece, otherwise goodbye job. Think, Dan, think, or you'll be doing your thinking with a broom in your hands. What other job would you even get if this doesn't work out? You've got no other skills, I muttered under my breath. Not a single idea, nothing. I don't know what's wrong with me. I used to write non-stop every day, night after night, and now I can't even string 2 words together. Time is running out, and I'm sure I won't write a thing. No ideas in my head. What genre should I choose? What storyline? I can't come up with anything. Damn it! What the hell is wrong with me? I muttered nervously. Alright, I'll watch a movie. Maybe the muse will come on her own. I started browsing the internet for something to watch. There were endless options, thousands of films from the classics to the latest releases, dramas, comedies, fantasy, action, everything you could think of. For every mood and taste, I scrolled back and forth for a long time. Seems like it's not just my writing that's falling apart, I whispered to myself. I decided to try a different approach. I closed my eyes and clicked on something at random. I closed my eyes and began scrolling down. Stop! I shouted across the room. Without even looking at the title, I quickly clicked on the movie, paused it, and brought my laptop over to the bed. This'll be better, I said. I got comfortable under the blanket, hit play, and froze. I never picked a movie this way before, but within the first 10 minutes, it was clear it was a love story. She had come back from the city to visit her family in the village, an impossibly beautiful girl. He was a simple country boy, adored by nearly half the girls around. Around the 30-minute mark, I realized I wasn't even following the plot. I was watching the emotions between the actors. They weren't just acting well, it felt real, like 2 people in love who had accidentally wandered onto a movie set and forgotten the cameras were even there. Watching them felt pleasant. I admired the way he looked at her, how she tucked her hair behind her ear, how gently he wrapped his arm around her shoulders. The story didn't matter, the emotions did, the love did. This film wasn't about events, it was about feelings. It didn't matter what their names were, it didn't matter how the story would end. What mattered was that something real was being born between them, something special. And in that moment, the muse quietly opened the door to my mind. Softly, carefully, but with certainty, I sat up in bed. Something gentle yet restless pulsed in my chest. Oh God, this is what I need to write about emotions, about love, about what lies between the words. I realized this was it, the thing I hadn't been able to find for weeks, the feeling. I jumped out of bed, rushed to my desk, grabbed a blank sheet of paper, and began to create. I had to write about love, about the very thing I've longed to feel myself, yet failed to find in any woman. I had to create the ideal her and her story, to write about her life. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and began to imagine painting her in my mind, her face, her gaze, her body, her voice, her soul. I didn't picture her as some glossy magazine beauty. She had her own uniqueness, a natural grace and elegance. She was different, unlike anyone else. Her perfection had to touch the soul. I took the pen in my hand and began to write. Her eyes were like emeralds, just as green and just as rare, and her lashes like butterfly wings, long and light. When she laughed, everything alive seemed to laugh with her, and when she was sad, the whole world fell silent. Her hair was golden, like sun-kissed wheat ready for harvest. It fell in soft waves over her shoulders. She was always tucking a strand behind her ear. Her slender body was shaped like a violin, delicate and graceful. A light white dress hugged her slim waist, and the thin straps that kept slipping from her shoulders only emphasized her beauty and fragility. She was quiet, intelligent, and modest, but with a core of strength and character. I placed the final period. It had been a long time since I felt such relief. At last, I'd found what to write about. The endless searching had been driving me mad. It's a heavy thought realizing that everything you do feels pointless, that your entire life depends on your thoughts, and now, when those thoughts just won't come, you're left with nothing. I leaned back in my chair. My heart was still racing like I'd just finished a sprint. The clock read 3:13 a.m. and I wasn't tired at all, only exhilarated. It boiled in my blood, pushed my mind into overdrive. I need to create. This will be a masterpiece. No one will ever call me a failure again. This story felt like it had always existed inside me, and now I had simply turned myself inside out. I loved this feeling, the feeling of control. I could do this, and I was doing it. No more excuses about needing more time or not being fast enough. I already knew what kind of story it would be. I knew the beginning, I knew the conflict, and soon I'd figure out the ending. Her name, I need to give her a name, I muttered under my breath. I didn't want anything ordinary. It had to be unique just like she was. The kind of name that when you looked at her, there'd be no doubt, of course that's her name. Nothing else would fit. So what's your name? I said aloud, rubbing my chin. Marie Alice Batten, no, none of those suit you, I muttered again. Thoughts fluttered in my head like moths around a light. I kept thinking and thinking and thinking. Her name needed to radiate softness and warmth. Camilla, Sarah, Jessica, none of them felt right. It needed to be gentle, almost fantastical. Maybe Sarah? No, come on, Sarah. Damn it, nothing fits. Has humanity seriously not come up with any beautiful female names? I grumbled. I opened my laptop's browser. I had to search online. Something had to be out there. I pulled up a list of girl names and began scrolling through one by one. Kara, Naomi, Alice, Isel, all beautiful, but none of them struck a chord. I sat in silence, the world around me still. My eyes darted across the screen, frantic searching for the name. In the past, I never cared much about what my characters were called. I'd just pick the first name that came to mind. But this time was different. Every detail mattered. And then, as I scrolled through the list, already losing hope of finding anything I saw it, the long-awaited name, and the moment I read it, it was like it carved itself into my soul. You'll be Luna, yes, Luna, that's it. I set the pen down. My heart tightened. It wasn't just a beautiful name, it felt alive, as if it reached straight into my soul. Luna pulsed through my body like a current. Luna, there was something elusive, mysterious, and tender in that name. It evoked music, moonlight, and silence. It was soft and delicate, just like her, the character of my story. My vision began to blur. I could hardly see the letters anymore. The clock read 5:40 am. I needed at least 2 hours of sleep, then I'd start creating again. I laid down on the bed. My head had barely touched the pillow when everything around me slowly began to dissolve. My eyes grew heavier, just like my thoughts. I was slowly drifting into sleep, silence. I was awakened by the soft rustling of leaves and the gentle tapping of branches against my window. Sunlight filtered into my room, tickling my face with its golden rays. Feels like it's going to be a good morning, I murmured, stretching. I lay in bed a little longer, then got up and headed to the kitchen to make myself some coffee. As I stepped into the kitchen, I was a little startled. Chaos reigned here. Well, just like in the rest of my apartment, and frankly, in my life too, while I was out there searching for my muse, I had zero motivation to deal with the state of my place. I turned on the kettle, found the only clean cup in the entire apartment, scooped in some coffee, and decided it was time to clear out this mess. I loaded the dishwasher with all the dirty dishes, which, to be honest, was all the dishes I owned. The only clean one was the cup I was about to drink from. I wiped the counters and windowsills, removing all the grime and cigarette ash. I threw out the overflowing ashtray and all. It was about time. I hadn't smoked in over 3 months, but for some reason, I still hadn't gotten around to tossing that thing out. I looked around. Things were already starting to look a lot better. I picked up my cup of hot coffee and headed back to my room. I looked around the room. It didn't look any better than the kitchen. I placed the cup on the table, and while the coffee was still hot, decided to at least tidy up my workspace. I threw away all the crumpled pieces of paper and wiped up the spilled coffee stains. I took the old half-empty cup off the table. "Oh, I've grown new forms of life," I exclaimed with a laugh, looking at the sludge at the bottom of the cup. "At least the table's clean now," I muttered, glancing around the room. I sat down, took a sip of coffee, and began to create. The room was silent, and silence is the perfect place for thoughts. A gentle breeze drifted in through the open window, brushing against my skin as if to remind me that the world outside my apartment still exists. Though for quite some time now, my world has shrunk to the square meters of this apartment. Everything I need is always here. Homework, a space to relax, everything is here. In this apartment, I used to at least go outside to buy groceries. Lately, I just order delivery. And that's it. I leaned my elbows on the table, picked up a pen, and started twirling it between my fingers. I don't know why, but it helps me think. Now, where did I leave off? I mumbled to myself. The character I've already created her, Luna now has an appearance, a personality, even a voice. I have a clear image of her. She already walks, sits, and gestures in my imagination. She's alive, well, almost alive. But what's her story? I stared at my notes, but nothing came to mind. Silence. It became stifling again. She has to love something, have a passion, a fear. She needs her own life, a past. I thought and thought and thought. A car honked outside. The neighbor upstairs kept drilling like he was trying to bore a hole into another dimension, and the woman in the apartment next door had a dog that never stopped barking. All these people have begun their new day, living their own lives, and I sat here trying to create hers. I turned my head toward my beloved personal bookshelf, my pride. I've read every single book on it, some of them even twice. There isn't a single book I haven't read. And at that moment, I grabbed the pen and started writing. The idea came to me on its own. Her childhood passed surrounded by her father's old books. He had instilled in her a love of reading from a very young age. Luna loved books and their unique scent. Each book carried a different fragrance for her. She loved silence, especially the silence of libraries. Luna was not lonely. She simply felt confined in the ordinary world, a world where few share her views and preferences. Great, the beginning is set. Sound of a phone ringing. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't afraid to answer Robert's call. Hello, Robert, I'm listening. Just calling to remind you, if you don't write a great story, you're going to be out of a job. Yeah, I remember. Don't worry. You better worry. This time it won't slide like before, he said sternly. Right then, right. Almost everything is ready, I replied confidently. Glad to hear it. Take care. Robert hung up. Of course, I had to bend the truth a little. I really hadn't written much yet, but the less he calls, the better for my nerves. A blank document blinked on my laptop screen right in front of me. I glanced thoughtfully at the keyboard for a moment. then shifted my gaze to the sheets with my notes where the story had already begun to take shape. I knew sooner or later I'd have to transfer all my notes to the laptop, but writing by hand was so much better for me than typing on a mechanical keyboard. The pen gave me a feeling that was more than just putting words on a page. I fixed my eyes on the paper. Words were already beginning to form sentences in my mind. I wanted to create for her the perfect day, the perfect life, and so I began to write. For some reason, when I write by hand, the words flow better. It's like I'm having a dialogue with myself and with my character. Luna woke up at dawn. She loved to rise with the sun. No hundreds of alarms, just by herself. She slowly opened her eyes. Her world did not like haste. She got out of bed, dressed in a light satin camisolo. Then, barefoot on the cold floor, she walked to put the kettle on the stove. Luna adored coffee. She made it strong and without sugar. She loved how its aroma filled the kitchen. She hated having breakfast. Instead, she took her cup and went out to the porch of her house, sat on the steps, her favorite spot, and enjoyed the beauty of her own flowers. While drinking her coffee, she read a book. That was her breakfast, a breakfast for the mind, not the body. That's what her morning is like, I said, tossing the pen onto the table. I was captivated by this story. I felt a surge of excitement to write it. A smile appeared on my face for the first time in a long time. The words I wrote didn't feel fake, they felt real. I stretched. My back cracked painfully, as if reminding me I'd been hunched over with a pen in hand for hours. But I didn't want to stop. I was curious myself where this story would take me, because I didn't have a clear plan. The words just poured out, and the story was unfolding on its own. I picked up the pen again, leaned over my notes, and began to create. Luna loved people, but she didn't always find common ground with them because she had a clear vision of everything. She hated lies and hypocrisy. The moment she noticed even a hint of these traits in someone, she immediately ended the conversation, almost always abruptly. She adored people who read. To her, they were completely different. They had imagination, and there was always something to talk about. Sometimes she imagined that everyone around her spoke the language of books. Then there would be no awkward pauses or gaps in conversation. There would be no need to search for topics because there would always be something to say. Fatigue was taking over me. I couldn't sit any longer. Every inch of my body ached. I decided to lie down for at least 5 minutes. I moved to the bed, simply fell on my back, and said, "Liz." I lay in the soft, warm bed. My eyes slowly began to close, but I fought hard to stay awake, to hold myself together. I could feel myself drifting into sleep. Dream. Lying in the darkness on the bed, I noticed something flicker. I heard a soft, gentle voice, but couldn't see who it belonged to. From the darkness, a woman in a delicate dress began to appear gracefully, as if floating. She slowly stepped into the light. A moonbeam filtering through the slightly open curtains touched her shoulder. Her satin dress shimmered with a gentle glow. Her facial features were refined and beautiful, as if painted by an artist. She enchanted me with her beauty, just as I dared to ask why she was in my apartment. Suddenly, everything started to sink. My vision blurred. The bed, the room, the walls, and the window all seemed to be drowning. Sound of a mobile phone ringing. I woke up, still not fully opening my eyes. I reached out, trying to find my phone buried somewhere under the blanket. "Was that a dream?" I said, realizing I had been asleep. The phone kept ringing non-stop, but I couldn't figure out where it was. "Where the hell is this damn phone?" I shouted nervously. I flipped the blanket, pillow, and sheets. The sound was definitely coming from my bed, but I just couldn't find it. Ah, here it is, I said, pulling the phone out from under the blanket. Robert was calling again. I bet he was about to nag me and yell that the deadline was burning. I really didn't want to, but I had to call him back. It wouldn't leave me alone anyway, and not picking up would just annoy him more, being out of a job that wasn't exactly an appealing prospect. Sound of phone ringing. What the hell is wrong with you? Why won't you pick up? He yelled right into the receiver. Hey, why the shouting? I replied calmly. Are you writing, or just waiting for your muse like always? I'm writing. Didn't I tell you? Work faster. I can hear you typing. It's 5 in the morning and you're already asleep. I write day and night. I'm tired. I dozed off a little. Dan, you only still have a job because we're friends, and I know you're a great writer. But if you don't deliver this time on time, you'll be out of the editorial office like a cork. Robert hung up without even saying goodbye. I was boiling with anger. I got out of bed and went back to the desk. The dream had been so vivid it felt like she really had walked into my room. All right, let's keep writing, I said, rubbing my hands together. I was curious what she did when she wasn't reading, what her world looked like when she wasn't sitting on the windowsill with a book. I closed my eyes for a few minutes and started thinking. I was creating her story myself, and it gave me incredible pleasure. After her morning rituals, Luna should either be working or studying, I pondered aloud. Exactly, Luna is a student. I picked up the pen and continued writing. Luna put on a light white knee-length dress that gently emphasized her slender figure. On her feet were sandals with thin heels. She didn't walk, she glided gracefully in them, turning every head as she passed by. She was striking, not in an intrusive way, but elegant. Everyone wanted to look at her. She wasn't trying to please anyone, she was simply herself, and she was rushing to her classes. She studies theater. The road to her university leads through a park. Every day, she walks the same path, already knowing every bench, every branch on the trees. When she reaches the cafe, the barista doesn't even ask what she'll order. She always gets the same latte. I paused, set the pen down, and suddenly caught myself thinking that I liked the girl I had created. I liked that I could control her, that I decided what she would wear, what she would say, where she would go. I smiled and picked up the pen again. She approaches her classroom, slowly opens the door and steps inside. Everyone turns their heads toward her. Good morning, she said softly. Luna, let's start with you. Have you learned the poem? Of course. I would like to hear you. And she began to recite. Her voice was so astonishing, like velvet. It wrapped around every listener. There wasn't a single soul in the room who wasn't listening to her. The silence was so deep you could hear someone swallowing. The teacher was silent, staring at his notes. Then he looked up, adjusted his glasses, and said, Thank you, Luna. That was genuine. You may sit down. And she quietly returned to her seat. I leaned back in my chair, threw my head back, and covered my face with my hands. My heart was pounding wildly. I couldn't tear myself away from the image I had created. She was not just a character, she was something more. I became so immersed in her creation that I started to smell her scent in my apartment, a scent I had invented myself. If only you were real, I sighed. And indeed, she was exactly what I had been searching for my whole life. I tried to find my love in nightclubs, libraries, dating sites, among friend circles, but none had touched my heart. And now, I had created the perfect version of a woman for myself. I became addicted to my creation, to her reality, to her uniqueness. I was captivated by her, captivated by creating her life. I need a break. I got up from the desk. I felt a throbbing pain in my head. The room was silent. Only the sound of my pounding heart echoed in my ears. For the first time in a long time, I decided I needed to get some fresh air. I glanced back at the desk. The numbered pages of my novella's first chapters were scattered about. I would need to transfer everything to my laptop once I got back. It would be hard and tedious later. I threw a sweatshirt over my shoulders, even though it wasn't really cold outside. I just liked hiding from the world under its big hood. Stepping out of the apartment, I locked the door behind me. I slowly walked down the corridor toward the elevator. The dim light barely pierced through the old, dusty ceiling lamps. I wouldn't say it was dirty here, but everything was old and worn. I pressed the scuffed elevator button. A small red light blinked, as if signaling it was working. I stood waiting for it to arrive. I hated waiting. I stood watching the doors, hoping they'd open any second. I hadn't left my comfort zone in so long that I felt awkward standing here. Finally, I heard the elevator approaching. The doors opened. I wouldn't say I was very surprised, but the interior looked worse for wear. It was covered in graffiti. The air smelled stale. I pressed the button for the first floor. The doors creaked slowly closed. And we started descending. The overhead lamp flickered faintly the entire way down. I felt like I was in a psychiatric hospital. The doors opened. Standing in front of me was my neighbor, an older woman who was always curious about everything. She knew everything about every resident in the building. Good afternoon. Haven't seen you in a while. Where have you been? Good afternoon to you too. Same as always. Right here, I said with a smile and quickly left the building. She wanted to say something more, but I ran out. Knowing her, she wouldn't just ask me once, she'd interrogate me for an hour. Outside, I took a deep breath of fresh air. It was so fresh and cool. The air seemed to cleanse me from the inside out. I felt the tension slowly melt off my shoulders. I smiled for no reason at all, because at that moment, it was good, calm, real. I walked familiar streets in my city, but I hadn't been here for so long that it felt as if they were new. My eyes kept catching silhouettes of women in light dresses. Each time, my heart raced. I was searching for Luna in those women, though I knew she was just a fiction. A fiction that had become all too real for me. I stopped in front of a coffee shop a few blocks from my home. Back in my student days, I loved this place. It had an atmosphere close to my spirit. Beautiful wooden tables, garlands hung over the ceiling casting warm light on the tables, walls made of warm bricks. Adorned with interesting paintings by some unknown artists, a vinyl player quietly played in the background. I ordered an Americano. My favorite taste bitter strong, no sugar, no milk, as always. I stepped outside. There were several tables scattered strategically in a small courtyard. I chose a spot more hidden from prying eyes. I leaned back in my chair. Steam from my cup rose gracefully and dissolved into the air. I was glad to be exactly here. My mind was resting. It felt like my thoughts were filling with oxygen. I sat waiting for something important, for a stream of thoughts, or for a meeting with someone. I slowly sipped my coffee and watched the passers-by. Everyone had their own life, their own direction. Some hurried, others leisurely enjoyed their path. In some people's eyes, I saw happiness, and others sadness, and there were those lost, whose eyes were empty. Suddenly, a scene played out in my mind. The picture was so vivid I almost believed in it. I quickly opened the Notes app on my phone and began to write. I had never used Notes before, but now was the moment I really needed it. I started recording everything I imagined, knowing it could come in handy for writing. Luna approaches me, sits across from me, opens a book and begins to read. She tucks a strand of hair that falls across her face behind her ear, reaches for my cup, takes a sip, looks at me in that moment, and smiles sweetly. She then lowers her gaze back to the book, gently turns the page with her fingers, and continues reading. The wing lightly stirs the pages and she holds them down with her hand. Her face is focused, yet at the same time very calm. I looked away from the phone, took a sip of coffee, and caught myself thinking that I can't stop imagining her. I can't tear myself away from her image, the image I created myself. I want to replay it again and again in my mind, like a scene from some movie. I finished my now cold coffee, then slowly stood up from the chair and left the cafe. I walked the familiar route home. The streets were slowly emptying, people becoming less visible. The city was swallowed by evening. Screen fades to black. I returned to my apartment. Unusually, I was a bit tired from all the walking, but I didn't rest. I needed to finish quickly, and to be honest, I was eager to get back to writing. This story was already like a drug to me. I sat at the desk, took the pen in my hands, and mechanically began to twirl it. This movement solved nothing but, as always, helped me focus. I took a clean blank sheet, marked the page number at the bottom by circling it so I wouldn't get confused. I stared at it, trying to find what to write next, but nothing came to mind. My head was as empty as this blank page. It felt like all my thoughts had hidden from me. Alright, I still need to transfer everything to the document on the laptop, so why not do it right now? I muttered, looking at the laptop. I took my notes and arranged them in the correct order. I pushed the laptop closer and picked up the first sheet. The cursor blinked on the laptop screen. The page was empty. A title was needed. I hovered over the keyboard. Damn it, I have to come up with something again. There was complete emptiness in my mind. From the depths of the silence, thoughts began to emerge slowly, but they appeared. I think about her. I created her image. I'm gradually creating her life. Every movement, glance, smile, the books she reads. I imagined how she drinks my coffee in the cafe. And suddenly it struck me. The title surfaced on its own abruptly and without a trace of hesitation. I made her up, I exclaimed, breaking the silence in my apartment. I grabbed the laptop. In bold letters at the center, I typed, I made her up. She my creation, a product of my imagination, made by me word by word, letter by letter, from silence, from stillness. With each day, she emerges from me, as if she had always quietly lived inside, and now she bursts outward. I began transferring every sheet into the laptop. I changed some things, deleted others, and added new parts. My fingers mechanically tapped the keys, typing letter by letter. I rewrote every sheet, rereading what I created again and again. I didn't even notice that 2 hours had passed. I was completely absorbed in the process. Having transcribed everything to the last word, I exhaled, lowered my hands, and began thinking about what to write next. And inspiration came all by itself. It appeared in my imagination so easily that I immediately continued writing. A bell rang. The class had just ended. Students streamed out one after another. Some were eager to be the first to run out of the lecture hall. Laughter and noise filled the air everywhere. Luna, as always, moved gracefully. Her movements were soft. She gathered all her notes into her bag and slowly headed toward the exit. At the exit of the institute, her friends were already waiting. Luna, are you coming with us? Ran up to Luna, the ever-smiling and as always, a bit loud Sarah. Where are you going? To the park for ice cream. Come on, you'll have some fun. The friends shouted in unison. Let's go, let's go. Laughter and noise filled the entire street. Maybe I really should have some fun, she whispered. Alright, let's go. Don't be so loud, she smiled. Yay, Sarah exclaimed and grabbed Luna by the arms. They headed toward the park as always, in a group. They hugged each other and shared gossip. Luna just walked, listened, and smiled. She didn't like spreading gossip, even if it concerned her best friends. Sarah was constantly talking about something. You simply couldn't stop her. She always had something to say and a joke to tell. Luna loved those moments. Though she was the complete opposite of Kapia, she liked the bustle, when you didn't have to think, when you just walk and that's it, and life around you is buzzing. The park welcomed them with its green beauty. Everywhere there were flowers, trees, brightly painted benches, and swings. At every step, there were kiosks selling ice cream and cotton candy. "Oh, I want ice cream. Who's with me?" The girls ran as a group toward the ice cream stand. "And I want cotton candy." I caught after them and headed toward the kiosk. She approached the kiosk and without hesitation chose the blueberry flavor. The vendor quickly spun the sweet treat onto a stick. The cotton candy was fluffy like a cloud. Its color resembled a beautiful cloudless morning sky, a delicate light blue. She smiled, thanked the vendor, and went toward the girls. I sharply exhaled and closed the laptop screen. Each new fragment of her story was like an adrenaline shot into my blood. My heart was beating so fast, as if I had run a marathon. My fingers trembled from the tension and concentration on the keyboard. I love breathing life into Luna. I feel her come alive between my lines. "Tired, need to sleep," I murmured with a sigh.